Most betrayals arrive quietly. Mine arrived on a Thursday. I had just turned 72, a retired librarian living in a small apartment on the edge of Boston, where the streets were always wet and the air always smelled faintly of salt and old stories. For most of my life, I had been a mother first, a widow second, a woman third. At least that's what I thought. But on that Thursday, at exactly 4:37 p.m., I learned I had never truly been a widow, just a wife abandoned long before the world knew it. The call came from a woman's voice, light, trembling, almost apologetic. "Is this Eleanor Grant?" I pressed the phone closer to my ear. "Yes. Who is this?" A breath. Soft. Unsure. "My name is Rachel," she said. I think we share a husband." I felt the world tilt beneath my feet. Not sharply, not dramatically, just a slow, terrible shift. Like realizing the house you've lived in your entire life has been sinking for decades. I sat down on my kitchen chair, wood creaking beneath me. "What do you mean?" I whispered. Another breath. "He said you died," she said, "when he married me." I froze. Every clock in the apartment seemed to stop. My husband, Michael, dead 23 years. Or so I believed. Buried in an unmarked plot after a fire. Gone in smoke and tragedy. But he wasn't dead. No, he had burned the marriage instead of the house. Burned my life. Burned my future. And walked out of the ashes wearing a new name. With a new wife. And, as I would soon learn, a new daughter. Rachel kept speaking, her voice quivering. "I only found your letters this week. They were hidden in his study, dozens of them, all unopened." My breath caught. Letters. Letters I wrote after the fire. Letters I mailed to the last address I had. Letters begging for answers. Letters drowning in confusion. All unopened, all hidden. A graveyard of the truth. Rachel's voice cracked. "I didn't want to believe he lied to me, but when I saw your handwriting, your name, the dates..." A soft sob. "I'm so sorry. You deserved to know." I couldn't speak. I simply stared at the small crack in my kitchen tile, the one I always meant to fix, the one Michael always promised to repair before he died, before he pretended to die. Rachel whispered, "He's sick, very sick. He's in the hospital and he asked for you." I closed my eyes. The man who killed my life with a lie was calling me back into it. And I had a choice in that moment, to remain the grieving widow I had been for decades, or to rise as the woman he never thought I could become. I hung up the phone, stood slowly, walked to the mirror. My reflection looked back, wrinkled, silver-haired, steady. This was not the face of the woman he abandoned. This was the face of the woman he underestimated. The city outside roared with traffic. Rain streaked the windows like fingerprints of ghosts. I grabbed my coat, my scarf, the folder of old letters I kept in a drawer no one ever opened. If he wanted to see me, he would. But he wouldn't see the woman he left behind. He would see the woman he made. And she was no longer soft. She was a storm waiting 23 years to form. I took the subway, not because I had to, I could have called a cab, but because I needed the time. Time to gather the pieces of a life that had just cracked open like an old shell. Time to swallow the truth that I had been living beside a ghost, and that he was still out there, breathing, lying, destroying. The train screeched through tunnels, the metal whining like something wounded. People shifted, sighed, scrolled through their phones, oblivious that a woman beside them had just learned her life was a lie. When I stepped out into the rain, the hospital loomed over the city like a cold reminder that even lies get old enough to die. The lobby smelled of disinfectant and stale fear. Hospitals always smell like something ending. A young nurse at the front desk gave me a careful smile. "Can I help you?" "I'm here to see Michael Grant," I said. My voice didn't shake. That surprised me. She typed something, frowned, then looked up with a softness reserved for tragedy. He's in the cardiac wing, room 1208. Her tone told me one thing. He didn't have much time left. Good. I took the elevator, watching my reflection blur in the chrome. My face looked older than I remembered, but stronger too, as if grief had built bone where weakness used to sit. The elevator chimed, and I stepped into a hallway washed in pale light, a place where secrets came to die. Room 1208 was halfway down. The door was slightly ajar. I pushed it open, and there he was, the man who abandoned me, the man who faked his death, the man who let me drown in widowhood while he built a shiny new life. Michael. Older, thinner. Ivy lines snaking into his arms. Machine beeping steadily beside him, but still him. Still breathing the air I once believed he'd lost. He looked up when he sensed movement. His eyes widened. Ellie! He whispered my name like a prayer. I stepped inside. Yes, I said. It's me. His breath hitched, a small, desperate sound. You came. I shouldn't have, I replied. He flinched, but I didn't sit, didn't move closer. I stood at the foot of the bed, not as a wife, not as a memory, but as a reckoning. He swallowed hard. I can explain. My laugh was quiet and shattered. Of course you can, I said. Men like you always can. His lips trembled. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. You faked your death. You let me grieve for a decade. You built another family. You erased me. And you didn't even have the courage to tell the truth until your lies started dying faster than you. Silence, heavy, unavoidable, suffocating. His eyes filled with tears. I was drowning, Ellie, he whispered. I couldn't be who you needed me to be. And instead, I said softly, you chose to be a stranger to me and a god to someone else. He closed his eyes. I wanted to come back. No, I said. You wanted a clean exit. His fingers clenched the blanket. I'm sorry. He said it like a plea, like a confession, like a bargain. But apologies this late don't clean the blood off anything. I stepped closer, slow, measured. You burned my life, Michael, I whispered. You burned my daughter's father, my stability, my years, and you left me to explain to a child why her daddy was never coming home. He winced. That wound still belonged to him. She grew up, I continued, without you, because you chose to be dead instead of being imperfect. His breathing hitched. Where is she? He rasped. Far away from you, I said, and safe. He nodded weakly, tears sliding down his cheeks. I deserve that, he whispered. Yes, I said. You do. He looked exhausted, flesh collapsing inward, regret spilling out. What do you want from me, Ellie? He whispered, his voice cracked. Why did you come? I leaned forward slightly, my eyes locked on his. I came, I said softly, to find out if you're worth forgiving. He swallowed. And am I? I straightened. No. A single, brutal syllable. His face crumpled. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was what came next. I pulled Rachel's letters from my coat, the letters he hid for decades, the ones meant for him, filled with grief and hope and unanswered questions. I dropped them onto his bed. He stared, chest trembling, eyes wide. He reached out with shaking hands. A letter slipped and fell to the floor. His tears dripped onto the paper. This, he choked. These, I didn't know she kept them. She didn't, I said. You did, hidden in your study. He froze, and I saw it. Recognition, guilt, fear. He knew I had spoken to Rachel. He knew everything was unraveling. He knew the end wasn't coming. It had already arrived. I leaned in just a whisper closer. You wanted me here, I said. Now I am. His breath trembled. What are you going to do? I smiled. Not warmly, not cruelly, just truthfully. I'm going to decide, I said, Whether your legacy ends with your lies or with the truth. His eyes widened, terrified. But before he could speak again, a nurse walked in with quiet steps. I stepped back. "Rest, Michael," I said. "You'll need your strength." "For forgiveness?" he whispered. "For what comes next?" His face went pale. I turned and left the room. His sob followed me into the hallway like a ghost I had finally learned how to walk away from. And as the door closed behind me, I felt something I hadn't felt in 23 years. Power. Not loud, not violent. A quiet, blistering power born from pain so old it had turned sharp. I didn't come for closure. I came for something much colder, and he was about to understand exactly what kind. The hospital lobby felt colder on the way out, as if the air knew what I carried now. Not grief, not shock, but a clear, sharpened purpose. Outside, the rain had stopped, but the pavement still glistened like the city was sweating secrets. I lifted my coat collar and walked toward the curb, and froze. Someone was standing just beyond the street lamp. A woman, small, elegant, mid-40s, dark hair pinned back, a scarf wrapped too tightly around her neck as if she were holding herself together. "Rachel?" Her eyes widened when she saw me. Fear, guilt, hope, all crashing together. "Eleanor," she whispered. I approached slowly. She didn't step back. She didn't run. She just stood there trembling like a confession waiting to be spoken. "I'm sorry to meet you like this," she said, voice breaking. "I didn't know. I swear I didn't know he had a wife." "A widow," I corrected softly. "By choice, not by truth." She flinched, tears surfacing. "I thought he was a good man," she whispered. "Not perfect, but good." "He was good at pretending," I said. She nodded once, sharp, painful. "I need to ask you something," she said. Her voice shook. "Not for him, for me." I waited. Did he ever talk about me? In your letters, I mean. Did he ever say anything that— "No," I said gently. "He never even opened them." Tears slipped down her cheeks. She pressed a hand to her mouth, breathing like someone trying not to shatter in public. "I suspected," she whispered. "I suspected for years, but I was afraid to know." Afraid. Yes, that I understood more than I wanted to. "What did he tell you about the fire?" I asked. "That he lost his wife," she said. "That it destroyed him. That he couldn't talk about the past." My stomach tightened. "And you believed him?" "I did," she rasped, "because he cried, because he shook, because he made me feel like I had saved him." That was Michael's talent. He never lied with words. He lied with wounds. She wiped her face with trembling fingers. "We have a daughter," she whispered. "Lily, she's 19. A fissure ran down my spine. A daughter. He had replaced the child he abandoned with another child he lied to. Rachel must have seen the shift in my expression. "I didn't come to guilt you," she said quickly. "I came because she deserves the truth. And I don't know how to tell her. This wasn't the woman who stole my husband. This was the woman he had used after he destroyed me. A different chapter of the same wound." "What does she know?" I asked quietly. "She knows her father is ill," Rachel said. "But she doesn't know about you, or the letters, or the lies. And you want to tell her?" "I have to," she whispered, "because she deserves more honesty than he ever gave any of us." Her honesty was disarming, sharp, fragile, real. "You're stronger than you think," I said. "No," she breathed. "I'm just tired of being lied to." We stood in the wet streetlight glow, two women tied to the same man, two different lives derailed by the same betrayal. But only one of us had known who he truly was, and the other had lived inside the dream of a man who never existed. Rachel took a shaky breath. "Can we talk somewhere? Not about him, about you, about the truth." I considered her. I didn't owe her anything. I didn't trust her fully, but she wasn't the enemy. She was collateral damage. "Fine," I said. Let's walk. She exhaled in relief. We walked down the sidewalk, our shoes splashing through puddles, the city humming around us. The rain returned slowly, mist first, then fat drops tapping the pavement like impatient fingers. Rachel spoke softly. I don't know who I married. Neither did I said. She looked at me, really looked. He destroyed you, didn't he? He tried, I said. But destruction only works if you stop fighting. And you didn't stop. No, I said. I survived. She closed her eyes for a moment, rain sliding down her cheeks. I want to survive this too. I stopped walking. You will, I said. How do you know? I turned to her, the city lights reflecting off wet pavement like scattered stars. Because survival is contagious, I said softly, and you just found someone who learned it the hard way. Her breath trembled. Then she whispered, What are you going to do to him? My answer was immediate. I'm going to make sure the truth is the last thing he remembers. She swallowed. That sounds final. It is. She nodded slowly, not approving, not resisting, just understanding. Because she had been living in the fire he created, and she knew exactly what kind of man had built it. She stepped closer. Whatever happens next, she whispered, I'm not against you. Something loosened inside my chest. For the first time since the phone call, I didn't feel alone. Good, I said, because what happens next will change everything. Rain fell harder now, thick, cold, relentless, a storm forming, a storm long overdue. And as we walked into it together, I felt the first spark of something fierce and electric rise inside me, not grief, not fear, but the beginning of revenge, sharp, quiet, precise, and about to strike. We found shelter under the awning of a closed flower shop, rain dripping off the metal edges like the sky was shedding old grief. Rachel wrapped her scarf tighter, her fingers trembling as she tried to steady her breath. I watched her. She wasn't lying. She wasn't pretending. She was a woman drowning in the same cold water I'd been thrown into years ago. But the difference between us was simple. I had learned how to breathe underwater. She hadn't. Not yet. We should go back soon, she murmured. I don't want Lily to wonder where I am. I nodded. Before we do, I said quietly, I need to ask you something. She lifted her eyes. Anything. I studied her face. Tired, beautiful in that fragile way heartbreak creates. When he married you, I said, did he ever mention money, accounts, inheritance? Her expression froze. A small, involuntary reaction. Fear flickering behind her eyes. She swallowed. Yes, she said. A year after Lily was born, he asked me to sign some insurance paperwork. He said it was routine, security for the future. And did you sign? Yes. I held her gaze. And was your name already on it? Rachel frowned. No, he added it later. He said he needed to update the beneficiary. Beneficiary? The word clanged like iron in my ears. Michael had rewritten his own life and written us out of it. How much was it? I asked. She hesitated. I don't know the exact number, but high, very high, an amount I never questioned because you trusted him, I finished. Her silence was answer enough. I exhaled slowly. Rachel, I said gently, Michael didn't just create a new life, he built a financial empire on the ashes he left behind. Her breath caught. What are you saying? I stepped 1 inch closer, making sure she heard every word. I'm saying he didn't run from responsibility, he ran toward wealth, and he used both of us, and his daughter, as tools. Rachel's face went pale. You think he married me for money? No, I said softly. I think he married you for a clean identity, and then made money with that identity. Her hand pressed to her lips. Oh my God! The rain softened for a moment, as if the city were listening. Rachel, I continued, has Michael been receiving any large deposits? Anything unusual? She closed her eyes in a pained grimace. Yes. I waited. When he sold his software company, it wasn't a company. She swallowed hard. It was stolen code, stolen contracts. He took a huge payout, millions, and I believed every lie he fed me about good investments and silent partners. Millions. A cold tremor ran through me. Do you know where that money is now? Yes, she whispered, in an account under both our names, but I don't have access without him. A joint account, accessible only by him, and now locked behind the reality of failing organs and unfinished crimes. I inhaled sharply. Rachel, I said softly, there's something you need to understand about men like him. She lifted her tear-glassed eyes. They never die clean. Her breath trembled. What does that mean? It means the moment one lie collapses, I said, all the others fall with it. The wind picked up, slamming rain sideways across the sidewalk. A storm inside a storm. Rachel hugged herself. What do we do now? She whispered. Her voice wasn't pleading, it wasn't weak. It was the voice of a woman standing on the edge of truth and deciding whether to jump or to fly. I answered her without hesitation. We stop thinking like the women he lied to, I said, and start thinking like the women he feared. She stared at me, breath caught in her throat, because she understood exactly what I meant. This wasn't grief anymore. This wasn't shock. This was strategy. This was quiet fire. This was the moment the prey begins to turn toward the hunter. We need proof, I continued. Everything. Documents, signatures, transfers, especially anything tied to that joint account. Rachel nodded slowly, a dangerous resolve blooming behind her eyes. I can get that, she said. Good. And then, she whispered. I looked out at the drenched city, the rain-lit streets, the shadows gathering under the weight of truth. Then, I said, we decide what kind of hell he deserves. Rachel shivered, but she didn't step back. She stepped closer, because she was ready to burn the lie she married, and so was I. Rachel lived only 12 blocks from the hospital, a townhouse tucked between a yoga studio and a shuttered bakery, the kind of quiet street where leaves gather in corners and neighbors pretend not to notice each other's tragedies. We walked in silence. Her steps were quick, almost frantic. Mine were steady, not because I felt calm, but because the older you get, the more you understand that storms don't reward speed. They reward precision. When we reached her door, she hesitated. I need you to know, she whispered. I never would have called you if I didn't think it was the only way. I know, I said, and I meant it. She unlocked the door and we stepped inside. The house smelled faintly of lavender and lemon cleaner, a place that someone once tried very hard to make safe. But homes built on lies always feel colder than the outside air. Rachel flicked on the living room light. Her voice was just above a whisper. All the documents I've found, they're upstairs. We moved up the staircase, each step creaking under the weight of what waited. She pushed open the door to a small study, a neat room with soft blue walls and a single desk beneath a window. This is where he kept everything, she said. I scanned the room, and then I saw it, a safe, black, heavy, half hidden behind a filing cabinet. The kind men like Michael buy when they know the truth might someday try to find them. Rachel's expression tightened. He always told me it was for sensitive contracts. I never had the code. Do you know where he kept it written down? I asked. Her eyes darted to the bookshelf. He had a habit, she whispered. He always hid important things behind Hemingway. I stepped toward the shelf. Which book? She pointed. For Whom the Bell Tolls. How poetic, how fitting. I pulled the book from the shelf. A folded paper slipped out and fluttered to the floor. Rachel gasped. I picked it up, unfolded it, and stared. Not a code, a list, dozens of names, dozens of account numbers, some crossed out, some circled, all under one header. Redline clients, unreported. My breath stilled. He wasn't just living a lie, he was laundering other people's lies as well. Rachel's voice trembled. What? What is that? Proof, I said, that he wasn't just running from his past. He was making money from other people running from theirs. She pressed a hand to her mouth. Oh my God! I crouched, lifting the paper higher toward the light. Names of corporations, shell companies, aliases, an entire underground map of financial deceit. Michael wasn't just a liar, he was an architect of other people's secrets. And we had just found his blueprint. I moved to the safe. Help me, I said. Rachel knelt beside me, shaking but determined. We entered birthdays, anniversaries, combinations I knew he favoured from the old days. Time of his mother's death. The date he left. The date he pretended to die. Nothing worked. The safe stayed still. Defiant. Silent. Rachel sat back, breathing hard. He always said this safe would open only when the world truly ended. I stared at the lock, or when the right truth arrived. A thought hit me, sharp, sudden, perfect. Rachel, I said softly, what's Lily's birthday? She blinked. Why? Because men like him don't hide money in safes. They hide guilt there. She swallowed. December 19th. I entered the numbers. 12 to 19. A mechanical click sounded, then another. The safe opened. Rachel covered her mouth with a sob. Inside were stacks of envelopes, thick folders, flash drives, sealed documents. But one item caught my eye instantly. A red leather notebook. Old, frayed at the edges. The kind a man only writes in when he fears digital footprints. I pulled it out. Rachel watched, shaking. Open it, she whispered. I did. The first page held one sentence written in Michael's handwriting. If she ever finds this, tell her I'm sorry. My pulse hammered. He didn't mean Rachel. Rachel leaned closer. Who is he talking about? I closed the notebook. Me. A long, heartbreaking silence filled the room. Rachel whispered, What else is in there? I flipped to the next pages, and the next. Receipts, maps, dates, notes, locations of offshore transfers, records of everything he stole over the years. Not just from me, not just from Rachel, but from dozens of unsuspecting people. And one entry, circled twice, nearly tore the breath from my lungs. If something happens to me, the money belongs to Eleanor. She deserved everything. Rachel gasped. He wrote that? Yes, I said. And he hid it, because he couldn't admit the truth while he was alive. Her voice cracked. What truth? I looked at her, looked at the safe, looked at the years buried in ink. That the only woman he ever loved, I whispered, was the one he left behind. Rachel stared at me, shock, grief, rage swirling together. Eleanor, she said softly. There's enough evidence in this safe to destroy him. Yes, I said, and there's enough to save us. The rain outside intensified, pounding the windows like the sky wanted in. Rachel inhaled sharply. What do we do now? I closed the notebook with a soft final thud. We stop his story, I said, and rewrite our own. And as the storm raged around us, two women who once shared the same lie stood ready to burn down the man who built it. Together. The storm had fully swallowed the city by the time we left Rachel's study. Thunder pressed against the windows like a heartbeat, too big for the sky. Lightning flickered over the walls, exposing the truth that had been sleeping in Michael's safe for years. Rachel clutched the red notebook to her chest. I carried the folder of forged contracts and offshore transfers. Together, we held the kind of truth that doesn't whisper, the kind that erupts. She looked at me with wide, frightened eyes. What if he tries to stop us? He can't stop what he doesn't understand, I said, and he never understood women who stopped waiting. She nodded slowly. There was no going back. Not after tonight. We sat at her kitchen table, papers spread between us like the pieces of an autopsy. Rachel flipped through the notebook's pages again, voice trembling. Look at this. He kept records of payments from those shell companies. He was laundering money for half the East Coast. Not laundering, I said. Coordinating. She blinked. What's the difference? One is a crime, I said. The other is an empire. And Michael, my husband, her husband, had built an empire of secrets. Rachel leaned back, shaking. All this time, I thought he was just a man who needed second chances. He was a man who needed exits, I said. Big ones, clean ones. And now he's dying, she whispered. I stared at the rain-soaked window. No, I said. He's unraveling. There's a difference. She swallowed. Eleanor, what are we going to do with all this? I didn't answer immediately, because revenge is not a single blow. It is an orchestration, quiet, deadly, undeniable. And this treasure chest of guilt, was a symphony waiting to be conducted. We do 3 things, I finally said. Rachel listened, breath held. First, I said, we secure the evidence somewhere he can't touch, somewhere no one connected to him can reach. Where? A place even he forgot existed. I met her eyes. My house. She nodded, quick and frightened. Second, I continued, we decide who deserves to know the truth and who deserves to choke on it. Rachel exhaled sharply. And third, she whispered, I lifted the red notebook. We decide whether he gets to die with dignity or with the truth carved into his last breath. Her eyes widened, horror and fascination wrestling inside them. Eleanor, that's cruel, I asked. Honest? Necessary? All of the above? She didn't answer. She didn't have to. She knew what he'd done to me, to her, to Lily, to his own reflection. This wasn't vengeance out of anger. This was vengeance out of math, out of balance, out of the simple equation of what one human owes another. Rachel finally found her voice. What do we do first? I stood. We go to the police. Her breath caught. With everything? No, with just enough. She blinked, confused. You want to give them only part of it? For now, a hint, a thread, something they can't ignore but can't fully unravel without us. Why? She whispered. Because a monster cornered is predictable, I said. A monster confused is dangerous. And if he finds out we have the rest? He won't, I said. Not yet. Rachel looked down at the sea of documents spread before us. The blueprint of a liar's life. You're not afraid, she whispered. Oh, I'm afraid, I said, but not of him. She studied me for a long moment, a woman 25 years younger looking at what she might one day become if she survived her heartbreak long enough. Then let's do it, she said. We packed everything into a waterproof bag. I slipped it under my coat. Rachel grabbed her keys. The storm outside hadn't softened, it had sharpened, rain slicing through the dark like cold needles. We stepped into it, wind whipped at our faces, water soaked into our shoes. Lightning cracked above the rooftops like the sky was splitting, and together, 2 women forged by the same betrayal walked out into the night with the evidence that could destroy the man who destroyed both our lives. When we reached the police station, Rachel hesitated at the doors. Eleanor, she whispered, once we do this, there's no going back. Lightning flashed overhead. I met her eyes. That's the point. We stepped inside. The station smelled like cheap coffee and wet coats. A night officer looked up, surprised at 2 drenched women appearing at midnight with the resolve of people about to break a city open. I walked to the desk. My name is Eleanor Grant, I said, and I'm here to report a crime that spans 23 years. His posture straightened instantly. What kind of crime, Mum? I placed just 1 folder on the counter. Thin, deliberate, dangerous. Fraud, I said. Identity theft, financial crimes, and a man who built a company from other people's disappearances. The officer's eyes widened. Who is the suspect? Rachel stepped up beside me. Her voice was steady. Our husband. We didn't give them everything, just enough to force the machine to turn. And once the machine turns, no one can unturn it, not even a dying man with a lifetime of lies behind him. As we walked back out into the storm, Rachel trembling but steady, I felt something ignite deep inside me, a small, cold flame rising through my chest. The beginning of fire, the beginning of real revenge. Not the revenge of shouting, not the revenge of breaking, but the revenge of letting the truth hunt him the way he once hunted freedom. And as lightning ripped the sky open, I whispered to the wind, "You're going to feel every lie you ever told." Because Michael's final days were no longer in God's hands. They were in mine. By the time we reached Rachel's house again, we were both soaked to the bone. Rainwater ran down our sleeves, our shoes squelched with each step, and our hair clung to our faces like dark strings. But there was a new fire in both of us, one that rain couldn't touch. We dried off in silence, exchanged a long look, and parted ways for the night. Rachel needed to return to Lily. I needed to hide the evidence. I walked home with the waterproof bag pressed to my chest like a beating heart. The storm swallowed me whole. Wind whipped at my coat, breath fogging in front of me, the city breathing heavy around my shoulders. When I reached my apartment, I hid the bag in the one place no one would ever check, inside the wall. A loose panel behind the bedroom radiator. A hiding place Michael himself had built decades ago to store emergency cash. Irony is the cruelest architect. I slid the documents into darkness, closed the panel, pressed my hand against the wall, safe, for now. The next morning I returned to the hospital, not to comfort him, not to confront him, to watch. The hallway outside his room buzzed with soft footsteps and hushed voices, nurses charting vitals, doctors making rounds, machines humming their cold metallic whispers. When I stepped inside his room, he was awake, and he looked worse, paler, thinner, like the night had carved pieces out of him. He blinked when he saw me. "Ellie!" His voice was a rasp. "I thought you wouldn't come back." "I did," I said, setting my coat on the chair. "To see how much truth you can still tolerate." His eyes narrowed in confusion. "Truth?" "Your wife knows everything," I said. He froze. "Rachel," he whispered. "Yes." Silence. Not the soft kind, the heavy kind that crushes a room. His throat bobbed with a swallow. "You told her?" "No," I said. "She found your lies herself. I simply provided context." He covered his face with trembling hands. "God, no." I let the moment sit, let him drown in it. Then I added quietly, "You also have another problem." He slowly lowered his hands. "What?" "The police know." It was as if a bolt of ice ripped down his spine. "What? What do you mean the police know?" I sat in the chair beside his bed, folding my hands neatly in my lap. "You've been laundering money for years. You've built a network of illegal accounts. You forged your identity twice. You committed federal crimes under false names." He stared at me, face draining. "And the police," his voice cracked. "No?" "Enough," I said, "but not everything." He sagged back against the pillows. "Jesus Christ," he whispered. "Jesus, Jesus." I tilted my head. "Funny," I said softly. "You only find faith when you've run out of lies." He inhaled shakily. "You don't understand. If they investigate, everything will fall apart." "Everything?" "Yes," I said. "That's the point." He looked at me with something wild behind his eyes. "You're doing this to punish me." I shook my head slowly. "No, I'm doing this to reveal you." His breath trembled. "Ellie, please." "Please what?" I asked. "Please pretend I'm still the woman you abandoned? Please believe I'm too soft to strike back? Please forget I spent 23 years grieving your death while you were building a second life?" He flinched with each sentence. Then he rasped, "Rachel, she won't understand. She'll take Lily and leave." "Yes," I said, "she will. Because she deserves better than a man who lies with every breath. He shook his head violently, wires pulling from his skin. No, this wasn't supposed to happen. I was going to fix it. You were going to die, I said, and leave all of us to hold the mess you created. His breathing stuttered. You want revenge, he whispered. No, I said softly. I want truth to finally find you. He stared at me, desperate. Ellie, please, don't let them ruin me. I leaned closer, my voice almost a whisper. You ruined yourself. A long silence washed through the room. He looked away, tears sliding down the side of his face. Then, quietly, what are you going to do next? I straightened. Depends. On what? He asked, terrified. I held his gaze. On whether you're finally ready to give me what I came for. His voice shook. What do you want? I exhaled slowly. The whole story, I said. Every secret, every lie, every name. Give me the truth you buried. His chest rose and fell too fast. And if I don't? Then, I whispered, I will let the truth devour you alive, piece by piece, until even your shadow won't recognize you. His eyes widened. Fear flooded them. Genuine fear. He had spent a lifetime running from the past. Now the past was sitting at his bedside, and it had my face. Then, a knock at the door. A police detective stepped inside. Detective Avery. Young, sharp, eyes that missed nothing. Mr. Grant, he said, we need to ask you some questions. Michael whipped his head toward me, panic twisting his features. Ellie, please, don't leave. I stood. You wanted me here, I said. And I came. I walked toward the door. But now, I added, you get to face the part you never prepared for. His voice broke. Ellie, please. But Detective Avery stepped forward. Sir, you need to answer some questions regarding financial discrepancies. I met the detective's eye briefly. He nodded. And I walked out, closing the door behind me, not softly, not violently. Just enough to say, this time I get to decide when the story ends. I didn't go far, just down the hall. Far enough that he couldn't see me, close enough that I could hear the tone of his voice change. Detective Avery was calm, professional. Michael was not. From behind the door, I heard the tremor, the collapse, the unraveling. He wasn't answering questions. He was begging, negotiating, grasping for excuses like a drowning man grabs broken wood. Detective Avery. Did you knowingly conceal secondary identities? Michael. No, yes, I had to. I didn't have a choice. Avery's voice stayed even. And the offshore accounts listed under Grant Holdings? Michael. It wasn't supposed to matter. Those accounts were never meant to. This isn't happening. His breathing grew ragged. This wasn't the confident man who faked his own death. This wasn't the smooth talker who seduced a second wife with the charm of a broken promise. This was a man seeing the walls he built finally closing around him. And he knew, even without seeing me, that I was at the center of it. That I didn't come for comfort. I came to dismantle him. I waited until their voices quieted. Waited until the hallway emptied. Waited until I was nothing but quiet footsteps and an old coat moving through antiseptic air. I entered his room again. He looked up instantly, eyes wild, desperate. Ellie, don't leave me alone with them, please. I closed the door. He choked on relief. I told them it was all a misunderstanding, he gasped. I told them you knew everything, that you approved. My voice stayed steady, dead calm. You used my name to cover your crimes again. He swallowed, panic choking him. No, I thought, maybe if they knew you weren't angry, if they knew you were my first wife. Dead wife, I corrected. You told Rachel I was dead. You told the police I was alive and consenting. Which lie do you want to keep? He flinched like the truth slapped him. You don't understand, he rasped. They're going to destroy me. No, I said. They're going to expose you. He shook his head violently, monitors beeping faster. This wasn't supposed to happen. I only wanted I only. He was choking on his own excuses. I stepped closer. You only wanted escape, I said. Escape from debt, escape from responsibility, escape from the life you ruined. He froze. I had hit the bone-deep truth. And when you realized escaping wasn't enough, I continued, you built an empire on fear, on other people's secrets, on stolen identities, on buried wives. His eyes widened. Buried? He whispered. Yes, I said softly. You buried me alive for 23 years. He shut his eyes. A tear slid out the corner. This is my worst nightmare, he whispered. No, I said. This is your worst reality. His breath broke. Then, quiet, barely audible, what do you want from me, Ellie? Finally, the right question. I leaned close, my voice almost a whisper. I want you to understand one thing before you die. He trembled. What thing? I held his gaze, unblinking. That I didn't forgive you. I outgrew you. Shock flickered in his eyes. Not anger, not regret. Recognition, the kind that rips a man apart from the inside. You changed, he whispered, voice cracking. No, I said. You changed me. He opened his mouth to speak, but the door swung open. Rachel entered the room, not timid, not fragile, not broken, changed. Her hair was pulled back in a tight ponytail. Her face was pale but composed. Her jaw was set. Lily stood behind her, a young woman with cold eyes, looking at the man she thought was her hero, and saw a stranger instead. Michael's face collapsed. Rachel, Lily, please, listen, I can explain. Rachel stepped forward, calm and terrifying in the way only a betrayed woman can be. No, she said, you've explained enough. Michael reached out to her, to both of them, but neither moved. Lily's voice was steady, sharper than her mother's. You're not my father, she said. Michael gasped, as if she stabbed him. Rachel inhaled shakily, then faced me. Eleanor, she said softly, tell him. I nodded. As he said. Because he deserved the truth delivered by the woman he tried to erase and the family he tried to replace. I stepped to the foot of his bed. Michael, I said, this is your ending. He looked between us, his first wife, his second wife, his daughter, and saw only the ruins of what he'd built. Then he whispered, broken. Please don't leave me. And I said the words I had waited 23 years to speak. We already did. He collapsed into sobs, body shaking, monitors screaming. I turned toward the door. Rachel followed. Lily followed. We didn't look back, because the moment you stop fearing the monster under the bed is the moment the monster finally fears you. And behind us, in that sterile white room, Michael Grant finally understood. I wasn't the ghost of his past. I was the consequence of his future. We didn't speak in the elevator. 3 women, 3 different wounds. One man who carved them. The doors slid open into the lobby, and the cold hospital air felt different now. Thinner, buzzing, heavy with something coming. A storm without rain. Outside, dawn was breaking. Grey lights spreading like bruises across the sky. Rachel wrapped her coat tighter. Lily shoved her hands into her pockets, jaw clenched so hard it trembled. Then Rachel's phone vibrated. Once, twice, 3 times. She frowned and pulled it out. When she saw the screen, she went pale. What? I asked. Her lips parted, voice barely forming the words. It's everywhere. Lily leaned in. What do you mean everywhere? Rachel turned the screen toward us. A news alert glowed brightly through the foggy morning air. Local man accused of long-term financial fraud, multiple identities, possible faked death below it. Michael Grant, his real photo, his real name, his real crimes. Everything he buried, everything he faked, everything he believed he had escaped was now on every major news outlet. Lily exhaled sharply. He's done, she whispered. Rachel blinked hard, tears climbing but refusing to fall. This is going to destroy us, she whispered. Our lives, our jobs, Lily's future. No, I said softly. It will only destroy him. She looked at me, eyes glassy. How can you be so sure? Because damage is not the same thing as destruction, I said. And your lives were built on truth. His was built on rot. Before she could respond, voices rose nearby. Two journalists burst through the sliding hospital doors, cameras swinging around their necks. Excuse me, one shouted. Is it true Michael Grant is upstairs? Is he cooperating with investigators? Rachel pulled back. Lily stiffened. I stepped forward, not aggressively, not nervously, just enough for the two reporters to notice the steadiness in my eyes. No comment, I said. My voice didn't shake, it cut. The journalists exchanged a look, sensing something bigger. Blood in the water. Behind them, a police cruiser pulled into the hospital drive, then another. The truth wasn't emerging, it was erupting. Rachel grabbed my hand. Eleanor, we should go. Yes, I said, but not home. Lily frowned. Then where? To make sure the truth stays loud enough that he can't bury it again. They followed me into the grey morning, our shadows long and sharp on the wet pavement. Because the world now knew his crimes. But it didn't know the whole story. Not yet. We arrived at the Boston Herald office 15 minutes later. The building's glass facade caught the dull light of morning, reflecting it in fractured pieces. Inside, reporters moved like bees around a hive hit with a stick. Phones blaring, screens flashing, editors shouting across desks. The moment we entered, a man in a thin tie and thicker stress lines approached us. "Can I help you?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "You're covering Michael Grant." His shoulders stiffened. "And you are—" "The women he pretended to bury," I said. His eyebrows shot up. Rachel added quietly, "And the woman he lied to for 20 years. Lily stepped forward, chin high. "And the daughter he never deserved." The man's expression changed instantly. He ushered us to a conference room, closed the door, turned on a recorder. I placed a small stack of documents on the table. Not the dangerous ones, not the whole truth, but enough. Enough to make sure the public story couldn't be softened, spun, twisted back into his favour. Enough to ensure that when the world spoke his name, it spoke the truth. The editor inhaled sharply as he read the first page. This is serious. Did you know this was happening?" "Yes," I said. "For how long?" 23 years. His eyes lifted to mine. And in that look, I saw understanding, cold, sympathetic, respectful. A woman wronged, a woman silenced, a woman now speaking. "What do you want to say?" he asked. I folded my hands on the table and told him. Not everything, not the parts that would hurt Rachel or Lily, not the pieces that would create more victims, but enough to paint Michael as what he was. A man who built an empire of lies and left 3 women carrying its weight. When I finished, the editor leaned back. "This changes everything," he whispered. "Yes," I said, "it does." The updated article went live before we reached the street. Rachel's phone buzzed non-stop. Lily's notifications flooded. Cars slowed near the curb as alerts pinged through the city. Every screen, every station, every corner of Boston. Michael Grant, the man who faked a death and built an empire of lies. My name wasn't included. Too personal, too deep. That part of the story was mine. But Rachel and Lily's were mentioned, briefly, respectfully, as victims of deception. And then came the final blow. Authorities are now investigating allegations that Grant may have staged his disappearance decades earlier. The world gasped. And in a hospital room 2 miles away, Michael read those words. He must have. Because a nurse later told us something that chilled Rachel to the bone. He tried to pull out his IVs, tried to get out of bed, tried to run, until his body failed him just as thoroughly as his lies did. Late that afternoon, my phone rang. A hospital number. I answered. "Mrs. Grant?" a nurse asked. "Yes." "He's asking for you." I didn't respond. He's not doing well. He keeps saying your name." I exhaled, slow, measured, cold. Tell him, I said quietly. He already had his chance. The nurse hesitated. Should I tell him you're not coming? No, I said. Tell him I'm busy living the life he stole from me. She didn't speak, then softly, I'll let him know. I hung up. And for the first time since I believed he died all those years ago, I felt free. Not lighter, not happier, just free. The kind of freedom a woman only earns when the truth finally tears open the cage someone else locked around her life. The nurse's voice lingered in my ear long after the call ended. Not her words, but the tone. That soft, uncertain tone nurses use when they're talking about someone who is no longer on the safe side of life. I stood at my window. The city stretched beneath me, cars glinting like insects crawling through morning fog. Somewhere across Boston, in a sterile room filled with fluorescence and regret, a man I once loved was breaking apart. And for the first time, I didn't feel responsible for gathering the pieces. I spent the next hours in silence. No phone, no speaking, no Rachel, no Lily. Just tea cooling too fast and sunlight creeping across the hardwood floor. I wasn't ignoring the hospital. I was choosing myself, something he had never and would never expect of me. The second call, it came at 6:32 p.m., another hospital number, another nurse. But this one didn't hesitate. Mrs. Grant, he's declining, rapidly. I said nothing. He keeps asking for you, she continued. He's confused. The situation is delicate. Delicate. A polite word for crumbling. He wants to confess something, the nurse added gently. He says it's the only thing he has left. I closed my eyes. A confession. Of course he wanted that. Men like him always do at the end. To lighten their conscience, not the load of the people they crushed. I waited. Should I tell him you're coming? She asked. No, I said. Tell him I received his message. I heard her inhale. And you won't be coming? I didn't say that, I replied softly. Just tell him I heard. I hung up before she could answer. Mercy, after all, has rules. Rachel arrives at 7:04 p.m. My doorbell rang. I opened it to find Rachel standing there, wind-chapped cheeks, eyes red from crying, hair tangled by rushing. Eleanor, she whispered. He's dying. For real this time. I nodded. I know. He keeps saying your name, she said, and mine, and Lily's. He's scared. Fear, I said quietly, is the last honest thing he has left. She exhaled a trembling breath. I don't know if I should go, she whispered. I don't know if I owe him that. You don't owe him anything, I said. She hesitated, but Lily, she wants closure. Closure, a word that has ruined more women than men. Closure, I said gently, is what the person dying asks for, not what the living receive. A tear slid down her cheek. So what do I do? Whatever lets you sleep tonight, she nodded slowly. And you, she whispered, are you going? I looked past her at the darkening street, the way dusk crept across the buildings, how the cold air tasted like endings. I don't visit ghosts, I said softly. I bury them. Rachel swallowed hard. Will you come later? She asked. I met her eyes. Yes, not for him, for her, for Lily, for the new life forming between three women who had crawled out of the same burning house at very different times. Rachel squeezed my hand. Then she left. The final call, it came at 9:11 p.m., a doctor this time. Mrs. Grant, he said, he's fading. If you want a last word, now is the time. I felt something cold settle inside me. Not grief, not triumph, but a strange, deep acceptance. Thank you, I said quietly, and please tell him something for me. Of course, the doctor replied. I breathed in, slow, steady, true. Tell him, I said, that I forgave myself. The doctor hesitated. And him? He asked. No, I said. Forgiveness is too sacred for a man who spent his life faking death. A pause. Then, I'll let him know. I hung up, and just like that, the last thread snapped. The last connection dissolved, the last wound sealed itself closed. At 10:03 p.m., my phone vibrated. A text from Rachel. He's gone. Lily's crying. I'm not sure what I'm feeling. Are you okay? I stared at the message for a long time. Then I wrote, I've been okay since the day I realized his lies no longer had a place to live. Another message came. What do we do now? I typed slowly. We live, and we build something honest. Finally. A moment later, can I come by tomorrow? I answered, yes. Bring Lily. We'll start untangling everything he left behind, together. Rachel wrote back, thank you, Eleanor, for everything. He couldn't destroy us. I looked at those words, and for the first time in decades, I believed them. I went to my bedroom, opened the hidden wall panel, pulled out the waterproof bag, sat on the floor, and opened the red notebook. On the last page, written in shaky handwriting, dated only a week before his collapse. She deserved my truth, but I only ever gave her the pieces that made me look whole. I closed the notebook. No tears came, no rage, no trembling, just peace, pure, brutal peace. He was gone. His empire was broken, his secrets were exposed, his victims were free. And his memory was finally stripped of the power he once held like a weapon. He didn't die with his lies. He died with his truth. And I lived to see it. That was my revenge. Not his suffering, not his fear, not his ending, but my beginning. The morning after his death was strangely beautiful. Clear sky, quiet streets, cold sunlight washing the city in a pale gold that felt undeserved after so much darkness. I stood at my window holding a mug of tea, watching the city breathe. For the first time in 23 years, I didn't begin the day by wondering what might have been. I didn't have a ghost to mourn, I didn't have a lie to untangle, I didn't have a past to survive, I simply had a morning, and my own pulse, and an empty space that did not ache anymore. At noon, Rachel and Lily arrived. Rachel looked worn but steady, the kind of steady that only comes when grief collides with clarity. Lily looked angry, but an anger with direction, not chaos. The three of us sat in my living room, sunlight warming the wooden floor at our feet. Rachel held the red notebook in her hands, delicately, as if it were a wounded bird. It feels strange, she whispered. Holding this, knowing what it contains. It's not a confession, I said. It's an autopsy. Lily's jaw clenched. I want to read every page, she said. He lied to me my entire life. I want to know who he actually was. Then you will, I said gently, but slowly. Lies are poison. Too much at once can be lethal. She nodded. Rachel looked around my apartment. It feels warm here, she said softly. Peaceful. I let that settle. There had been a time when this place was filled with grief. Walls absorbing the sound of my sobbing, air thick with loneliness. Nights where silence pressed so hard it felt like drowning. But now, there was light, there was company, there was possibility. Peace is earned, I said, and expensive, but worth the cost. Rachel wiped her eyes. What happens next? She whispered. I took a breath, slow and steady. Next, I said, we reclaim every piece of our lives that he tried to own. Lily leaned forward. And the money? She asked quietly. The accounts, the companies, the damage. There will be legal battles, I said, investigations, audits. I looked at Rachel, at you, at me. Rachel swallowed. But we didn't do anything. No, I said, and that's why we'll win. They exchanged a glance. Two women standing on the edge of a new life, still afraid to believe they were free. We'll handle everything together, I added. We're bound by the same wound. But we can choose to heal it differently, Lily asked. And the notebook, what do we do with it? I smiled faintly. We use it, I said, to guide the lawyers, to expose what needs exposing. To bury what deserves burial. Rachel blinked. Bury? Yes, I said. Not everything needs to be fed to the world. Some truths are better laid to rest, quietly, respectfully. She hesitated. And Michael? What about him? His funeral, she said softly. There's no one else to plan it. I thought for a long moment. Then I said, he burned that bridge long before he died. Lily exhaled sharply. I don't want to go, she whispered. You don't have to, I said. Rachel whispered, I'm not sure. Should we let him go without anyone there? Yes, I said softly. Funerals are for the living, and the living deserve peace. A long silence followed. Not heavy, just full, like something had finally settled. After they left, I returned to the hidden wall panel, opened it, slid the notebook and documents inside, not to forget them, to protect them. The truth was finally safe, finally ours, finally face up instead of face down. And for the first time since I was a young woman, I felt light. Not empty, light. I made myself a new cup of tea, sat in my favourite chair, opened the window. Cold autumn air swept in, whispering through the plants on my windowsill. I closed my eyes. And in the quiet of that moment, I realised something profound. I wasn't the woman he left behind. I wasn't the woman who mourned him. I wasn't the woman who searched for him. I wasn't even the woman who exposed him. I was something entirely new. A woman rebuilt, a woman unburied. A woman whose life was no longer being lived in someone else's shadow. And as sunlight warmed my face, I whispered to the empty room, You didn't get to write my ending, Michael, but I got to rewrite yours. The city outside continued humming, alive, indifferent, eternal. And at last, after 23 years of carrying a ghost on my back, I set him down and walked forward without looking back.